Hey viewers! This time we're going to discover people's heartwarming moments when everything just clicked and they realized their partner was truly their person. Let's dive right in.
When did you realize your partner was your person?
The fourth date. We went to the movies. I wanted to see Charlie's Angels and he was happy to see it because I wanted to. Instead of watching the movie, I was watching him and I shocked myself with my own thoughts, out of the blue. I just thought, oh my god, I love this man. And right as I was thinking that, he turned and looked at me and said I love you, and then he looked shocked that he said it. Then he started to apologize and I was like, no. That's kind of crazy because right at the moment I was thinking it, but I wasn't gonna dare say it because I thought maybe too soon and I'd scare you. LOL. Been inseparable ever since. 20 years now, gone in the blink of an eye, but it also feels like we have been together for a few lifetimes.
Not long after we started dating, I fell in love with him hard and I wanted to be the best person I can for him. He's everything to me. So sometimes I feel like he deserves better than a train wreck that's me. But for me, he is the light in the dark. I had several moments of realization. One was on a phone call with him. He's the only person I've ever loved. He woke up a whole other side to me I didn't realize existed. Another time was when I went to London with him. Felt like for a few days that we lived together. I didn't want to leave. The final one was when I was going through a deep depression and tried to overdose. He was there for me. It made me appreciate him. I just hope that I'm his person too, if I even deserve that title.
On our first date, when I spent the night and he spooned me and breathed on the back of my neck all night and I didn't want to kill him.
I knew within a month or two of dating. It really was a when you know situation. He brought me such a calmness and comfort I'd not felt before with other partners, and I fell so deeply in love with him from the moment I met him. Thankfully, now 7 years later, he's my husband plus soon-to-be father to our daughter. I couldn't imagine a better man by my side.
It has happened so many times over the course of 11 plus years together. The first that I remember was how absolutely accepting he was of me. He was the first guy I dated who didn't almost immediately have constructive criticism for me, whether that was changing my looks or style or how I spoke. He just enthusiastically liked me. My favorite story of this, though, is when my husband knew I was the one. We had been on a few dates and he hadn't kissed me goodbye yet. I really struggle with social cues and couldn't figure out if he just wanted to be a friend or what, so I called him and point blank asked him, "Do you like me?" "I can't tell." He said he can remember it so clearly. He was walking downstairs and literally stopped mid-step because it caught him so off guard. He stammered out, "Yes, yeah, I like you." And he said that was the moment he just knew. Every girl he had pursued before me, he felt like there was a weird show interest, but not too much, but not too little, but not too fast, but not too slow expectation that always ended up fizzling out. So that's what he was used to, and he said my total honesty was such a breath of fresh air for him. He just knew he could marry me right in that moment. What a beautiful collection of heartfelt moments. It's a reminder that love can reveal itself in various ways, and that true partnership is often found in moments of authenticity. Let's hear more of these.
Maybe first night. I joke about him being the longest one-night stand ever, but a mutual friend introduced us and we went to a party together. I got drunk and sleepy and he said I could use his lap as a pillow. I did and I fell asleep but could still feel him stroking my hair. We went back to his dorm room and I slept there. He never tried anything, just tucked me in beside him. What I learned later is he called up the woman he was dating at the time and broke up with her. I think we found out at the same time we were each other's person. That was 34 years ago.
I realized he was my person when I realized that every time he touched me, he did it really gently. It's a bit cliché, but I used to shift my hair in my face just so he would lightly tuck it behind my ear. I haven't exactly had a lot of men be gentle with me throughout my life, so I really valued being valued and it solidified my feelings for him. We've been married a few years now and he touches me normally now, which I take to be a sign I've grown stronger and less fragile. A lot of my growth is thanks to his kind encouragement and support.
When we started dating, I told him I had bad anxiety and panic attacks, took meds for it. He asked a couple of questions, but I didn't think too much of it. We went to a mall, and it was the first time I'd been to one after lockdown. I felt an attack coming and asked him to get me out of there. I'm hyperventilating in the parking structure. He gets me in the car, hugs me and starts taking me through breathing exercises. He asked questions about my anxiety to learn grounding techniques in case one happened when I was with him. I love him.
I thought I had lost the ring my mother gave me when I was 15. I'm 37 now. Well, we went to look for it together in the area where I thought I lost it, which was near trees and a lot of grass. He took me home when it got late and went back to look for it 4 hours later. He went home around 3 a.m. in the morning, and then at 6:30 a.m., he woke up, went to go pick me up and look again. He picked me up with coffee for him and I to go look for the ring. We found it, and I later found out he couldn't sleep until we found it because he knew how special it was to me. That's one reason. Another is I see how good he is to my family and has helped my mom fix her car so many times. He also never treats my brother differently, even though my brother has mental illness.
When he watched the old Barbie movies with me, with zero complaints, Swan Lake and such.
It was within the first few months. He invited me to one of his friends' houses to play board games. I'm a little shy, and he knew I was so nervous about meeting everyone and trying to pick up a new game without making a fool of myself. Shortly after the game got started, he gave me a gentle little pinch on the back of my arm and smiled at me. I felt so safe with him in that moment, and I've been safe with him ever since.
We had met and worked together, but ended up dating a year or so later. We were living close to each other, about a 4-hour drive. He had planned to come over on New Year's Eve, but had to work late. I was bummed, but totally understood. Not only was it a 4-hour drive, it was going from Montana to Wyoming with some gnarly roads and winter conditions. He still came to see me because he wanted me to be his midnight kiss. We've been married for over 4 years now.
These stories really capture the essence of love and compassion in different forms and levels. It's clear that the smallest moments can transform into lasting bonds. Let's continue with the comments.
2 moments. The first date we had, we went on a long walk. We were sitting by the river when this old lady came up to us and started talking like old ladies do. He was really sweet to her, and after 10 minutes of conversation, he wished her a really good day, and we kept walking. The second, we went to my relative's wedding really early in our relationship, which was at a family cabin, and stayed together in a camping van. The first night we snuggled in bed, and suddenly he let out the loudest fart I have ever heard, and I laughed so hard I cried. He sheepishly said none of my bodily functions are quiet, unfortunately. We were going on a week-long road trip together right after, and it just took all the awkwardness out of it.
We were dating, and one night he picked me up and we were going to hang out at his house and watch movies. We stopped at a store to get snacks, and a man asked him for money for groceries for his family. So my now husband took him into the store and bought him food for his family. It was the sweetest thing I've ever seen anyone do, and I knew he was my one in the moment.
First date. I thought to myself, I'm going to marry this man. Then I immediately thought, oh my god, that's so stupid. Spent the next year trying to find a good reason not to, but it just never came. A year after that I married him.
This sounds crazy, and maybe I am, but our second conversation. It wasn't anything special, just shooting the shit. I realized that talking to this man felt like home, in a way no one else ever had. A few months later we got together, and I feel like I've fallen in love with him 100 times over.
During the pandemic, my job was closed and he was working from home. I went to a walk on the park and he got out of work early. He was sitting in the bench I sat at. Usually I don't like people, but for some reason we started talking. And it just felt supernatural. We sat and talked for about over an hour. By the end of it, we exchanged phone numbers. Like an hour later, he asked me out on a date. I remember getting home and telling my best friend that I had just met my future husband. We are still together, and I've never been happier.
I had a little better fish I named Flush. I got him after my divorce, so I had a reason to get out of bed. I met my now husband quite a few months after my divorce, and Flush moved over to his house since I was there all the time. One day Flush died and I was devastated. Flush had been there through all my sadness. He was just a fish, but I loved him. My husband shooed me out of the kitchen and buried Flush in a nice little grave. It was a sweet gesture, and I have loved him ever since.
I was so enamored with how kind he was to everyone, no matter who it was. And I never felt any sense of regret or shame or anything when I was with him. I only ever felt loved and safe. He was just so sturdy and confident and sure of himself. I was blown away. I'd never met anyone like that, let alone dated someone like that. It's been 11 years now. We have 2 beautiful children and he's still as kind and wonderful as he was the day I met him. His 3 girls are so lucky to have him.
When he took care of me after my hysterectomy, about a year after we'd started dating. He'd never had to take care of another person before, so he was a little clumsy, but so thoughtful. He even beat the hard levels of the video games I played because I was on pain meds.
We were in grad school and liked each other's comments in classes. Then we started going out to lunch once a week. After kind of knowing each other for a year, one day we both totally fell in love. It was probably a cumulative effect. We've been married for 38 years now. When you know, you know. Indeed, when you meet the special someone who brings out the best in you and makes you feel truly cherished, that's when you know. Stick around for the remaining bits.
The day after I met him, he texted me asking for my help, and my heart was banging so much because suddenly all I wanted to do ever from that text message was protect him. I just wanted him in my life forever. 6 months later I proposed because I knew this guy was the one for me.
When I realized he was my source of calm and peace in my crazy life. He always knows how to bring me back down to earth.
As teenagers, me and my boyfriend were making food together in the kitchen, and at one point I turned around and put chopsticks in my mouth as if I was a walrus. I then turned around to surprise him, and saw that he had done the exact same thing at the exact same time, and we just stood there with chopsticks in our mouths smiling at each other. We were together for 16 years, but he eventually broke up with me. I guess it wasn't meant to be, but he was special to me, and this was such a unique moment I'll never forget.
Instantly but fully coming to full realization was throughout times. We're exactly the same yet so different at the same time, but it works. No matter how shitty our exact temper is, we still find ways to make it work and have each other's back. I sincerely can't see a life without him in it, even if ever as a friend, because it's like life became the worst and the best since he's in it. And I know the feeling is mutual, so that makes it even better and genuine.
The first week we went out, to be honest. We met one afternoon, had mutual friends, and he asked me out for dinner on a Thursday night. We spent more time talking and I got a look at the ton of books in his dorm room, and we were basically inseparable by the weekend. We've been married for 28 years. Sometimes you just know. Very similar backgrounds, both into learning all kinds of new stuff, but our interests are actually almost completely divergent, lol.
I think part of me knew at the end of our first date. We had walked around and talked for 7 hours, and we only ended it because he had to drive an hour home and had work the next day, and it was already after 1 a.m. Almost 5 years, a baby, a house, and a whole bunch of crap later, we still haven't stopped talking. We recently got married, and becoming his wife felt like the most natural thing, like I was meant to go through all the crap I have just to get to this point.
We had been friends for a long time, but this moment of realization happened when I had told him a lot of personal things about myself and just felt a huge sense of relief and comfort because I knew I could tell him anything and he wouldn't judge me for it. Just full appreciation for who I am as a whole, complicated person. I'm also completely comfortable being emotional and crying around him, which is rare for me. If we disagree or have a misunderstanding, I trust we can get through it respectfully and usually come out the other side loving each other more. I suppose I'd sum it up as great emotional vulnerability and intimacy.
He has the opportunity to go to New York Comic Con just a few weeks into our relationship, and I wasn't able to join him. He waited 2 hours in line to get me a signed art print from a comic book artist I'd mentioned being a fan of. He also got a Snapchat message of her saying hi to me and thanking me for being a fan.
We just shared with you some of the heartwarming moments when people realized their partner was the one. It's clear that there is kindness, empathy, and care in true love. Do you have a similar heartwarming realization? Let us know in the comments.